So I lead the entire digital piece for Rapido. Have been in the system for last 2 years, and yeah, I have definitely seen some turbulent times here, right? And definitely a very challenging time in terms of being in a commute sector during COVID situation, right? Definitely a lot of learnings and a lot of dynamic changes, strategies that we have been able to deliver and being able to pick up and cope up with the situation. Prior to this, I have majorly been in part of growth teams for industries within edtech, travel, and again commute sector. Pretty much into digital and growth teams within startup ecosystems. That's pretty much about me.
Great. Thanks, Neha. Bindya, you want to go next?
Hey, hi, Rahim. Thank you. So I'm from a very different domain. I work with Myntra. I've been associated with e-commerce for the longest time that I remember, for almost 13 years now. What was interesting is that I got into e-commerce pretty much at the inception of e-commerce in India, which actually helped me learn and unlearn that entire trajectory, and is actually also helped me understand what are those 0 to 1 initiatives that essentially help a company to step jump the overall growth. What has also been interesting is we've been constantly innovating, and what we are going to discuss today is very, very relevant to one of the innovations that we actually took up in the last couple of years, and I'm very excited about that specific topic because I have a lot of things to share around that. So yeah, I'm very stoked.
Very nice to have you. Akhil, I don't see you actually on the participant list. Are you there?
I think Akhil will be joining us in a little bit, so you can start.
So maybe I can give you a brief background. Sure. Yeah. I can give you a brief background about myself. I'm the VP product at CleverTap. We are an omni-channel engagement, retention, and analytics company. And we help businesses such as yours to build a very strong affinity with your customers through hyper-personalization of your core products. Been here for about a year. And prior to that, I was actually I've done a whole bunch of things, mainly worked in the US as my first company, working in India for an Indian company. So it's definitely been an eye-opening experience in a positive way. Besides this, I've done venture capital, I've done my own startups, and I've worked at big companies in the US. So nice meeting you all. Let's start off with the first set of questions. We can introduce Akhil once he joins us. But basically, what does it mean to be omni-channel? I mean, we keep throwing all these buzzwords around, especially in India. It's in a hyper-growth phase, I would claim. People talk about multi-channel, omni-channel. What I like to learn from you, since you guys are directly facing your customers, is what is omni-channel, and how has that taken a significance in your respective businesses? So, we can go alphabetical, I guess. Bindya, you can go first, and then Neha, and then if Akhil joins in, we can have him last.
Sure. So Rahim, I am coming from a platform side, right? When we speak of omni-channel, for us, what it meant was integrating the offline side of it. In the last 2 years, what we've seen is that a lot of brands have gone D2C. A lot of brands have gotten onto marketplace platforms. That means that they extended an omni-channel leg for themselves. For us, it's been vice versa. We have gone and reached out to the brands and expanded and helped expand that omni-channel arm for them, right? Yeah. I'll just give you just on the journey, right? What has essentially happened? Back a couple of years back, we started onboarding a lot of offline brands because we're like a marketplace of brands, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to service our consumers and to be able to give a larger selection, freshness, so on and so forth, right? Initially, there was an assumption, or there was some kind of assumption that when you make brands live, it's mostly a discounted stock that you're making live, etc., etc. People weren't even sure if it's really if the merchandise is if it's fake, if it's real. There was just some kind of notion around e-commerce, etc. Right? We've actually surpassed that journey. We've actually come a long way, where we are saying that we've I don't know how many of you have heard that we've actually acquired an omni-channel arm. We've expanded, we've made brands live on omni-channel. Today, how it helps us is that we become like a true destination for brands, because today, if let's say I have Nike, Puma, any brand, I have the largest selection of that brand. I'm able to launch the selection at the same time when the brand is launching it in the store. From the consumer perspective, I become a destination for that specific brand, and it helps me to build the right traffic hook. For the brand, what it helps is that they're able to really expand their digital arm, because not everybody can actually invest that kind of capital in expanding their digital arm. So it really helps them to quickly come to pace with the market. And at the same time, of course, serve their consumers. What I would say is that what has changed from before to now is, in terms of that whole perception that it is only for discounted merchandise, which is completely changed, because today brands are launching fresh merchandise at the same time they're launching in the stores. Second thing, what has really changed is, we are today not only speaking about omni-channel as being offline, online, or other two different channels. We're today saying that offline, online is essentially one channel, and we're servicing one consumer, right? The moment there is a thought process change, that means a brand, instead of saying that this is my brand and I have this digital arm, versus saying that I have this consumer, whether I am serving from offline, that is my store, or versus say a digital arm, it's either ways, it's the same thing, right? So that change in the thought process we've seen the last 1 or 2 years, and especially with COVID coming, etc. Right? In fact, like I said, almost 30-35% of the brand's revenues we've been able to direct, right? That's massive. So that's the entire thought process changed for the brands from the overall omni-channel space. And today we are at a cusp of innovation, which I'm sure we'll touch upon later in the discussion, where we're saying that today we are only 50% there, or only 40% there. There's huge leg of true omni-channel, if I was to put it that way, that we need to cover in the next couple of years.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely hold that thought. I'm going to come up with another question for you just based on that. Maybe we can talk to Neha about her experience at Rapido. And what is she like? What do you mean, Neha, when you think of omni-channel, and how has that taken significance for your business?
Sure, right. So when we talk about omni-channel, right, I would say 3 key elements that kind of drive your omni-channel strategy. One is, are we present on each and every channel, each and every platform that could be a potential touch point to my user? Am I consistent across these channels? That is second. And thirdly, are these channels, these platforms, these systems talking to each other in terms of data flow, in terms of passing on data points, passing on user insights between each other, between the various touch points that the user might be interacting with, right? With the evolution of tech and with the more and more penetration of mobile within the country, we have seen that user might just be, even researching on phone in a store environment. They might like a product, they might get a look and feel of the product, but they would actually be browsing for the best prices or browsing for the reviews on an online platform, right? Gets more and more important to kind of pass these data points between the various systems, making sure that we are consistent in what we say. Taking Rapido's example, right? We are definitely an app only, an online only brand, right? But what comes as a substitute to a store experience is the on-ground reality for us, right? We are very, very hyper local, understanding what kind of supply am I able to deliver as a brand in what particular cluster, right? With COVID coming in, we have seen a very shift in demand, a shift in the type of clusters we were saying very heavy in demand, right? Earlier, maybe clusters that were near tech parks, that were near offices, those had very high demand. But with COVID, we are seeing that shift, right? People might just be using it for a grocery kind of very essential needs kind of use cases, right? So how do I make sure that I'm able to deliver on that demand and supply there? That is one thing where we have tried to create an omni-channel strategy, create a data flow between these setups, right? We have kind of created a real-time dashboard with a 10-minute lag where we are able to see what kind of demand to supply ratio am I able to get for any particular cluster, right? Sure. And this then is passed to my systems, be it my acquisition channels, be it my retention channel, that I don't go after bringing users in supply constraint areas, right? I bring more and more users where I have more supply. Similarly, if I know that a particular area is very demand heavy, but I'm not able to get driver partners there, right? How do I communicate to my drivers in real time that move to this particular area, and I would give better incentives to them so that I'm able to deliver as a brand with this omni-channel experience, right? So that is something that we have been trying to build up and making it more robust in last 1.5 years, and that has definitely helped us improve the overall experience, overall conversion rates within the app. So that's one part when it comes to omni-channel that we've been trying to develop and
That's great. I mean, it's really good to know that besides having a front-facing omni-channel interface that you have with your users, you need to be able to build the back-end systems to be able to manage that seamless experience. So a lot of work goes in the supply chain just to present that omni-channel experience to your end users, which is very good to know. I'm going to actually introduce Akhil now. Akhil is actually on board. Hi, Akhil. Thanks for joining in. Why don't you introduce yourself? The way we've done it so far is that you give a brief background about yourself, and then I'll follow up with the one general question I'm asking everyone. So go ahead.
Sure, Rahim. I think thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's been so I'm currently leading the entire mobility team on the product side at Ola. Yeah. Overall, over 13 plus years of experience across various companies, across consumer tech domain, Wink, and I think IB Group, Expedia, and Adobe, to name a few. Nice. So have experience across B2B and B2C, primarily B2C engagement, retention side of things. Primarily in overall an MBA from IIM Calcutta, engineering background. I am very happy to connect with the folks and the panel here today on that front.
Yeah, thanks for joining up. So the question that I asked Neha and Bindya was essentially, what does omnichannel mean to you? And how has that taken significance in your business, more specifically?
Sure.
So that's a few, yeah.
Agreed. I think omnichannel overall to me actually means say a set of integrated and coherent experiences across various types of interaction points that a user would interact with across your business. And I think I've had experiences across various companies in the past, Gojek being one of them, Wink was another one of them, where Airtel was trying to define, creating a common user profile, and then across various channels, across say when they interact with your customer support, to when they actually work with you in your say an email for you from your business across a particular say item that they were looking at on the website, to probably an experience that they actually enjoy on an offline basis itself. I think all of them having the context of their prior interactions with the business is where I think the core to building an omnichannel experience really lies. I think that's where core is engagement in that sense and interaction around the user experience. I think some of the larger businesses such as Ola are actually doing that across various channels right now. Say our customer support, whether you interact with us through chat or email or even phone, would have very similar and context-based experiences there. You would probably have common experiences in terms of where you left off the funnel in terms of say doing a particular transaction or experiencing a particular product from Ola suite of apps. That's been the similar case with some of the global behemoths that I've been working with up to now.
Okay, so maybe I can start off with the second question for you. And essentially, how does one differentiate between multi-channel and omni-channel? I think historically, we've all experienced people sending messages out on push, on WhatsApp, on email, on SMS, there's RCS, a whole bunch of channels. In fact, I'm going to talk about another channel also. I'm going to push in my own bit from CleverTap. But how do you differentiate multi-channel versus omni-channel, number one? And what's your strategy per se to create a much better user engagement in an omni-channel universe?
Agree. I think when you talk about say a multi-channel versus omni-channel experience, I think Genesis was with multi-channel experience when we actually saw that consumer was actually experiencing the product and probably had multiple touch points wherein we could actually reach the customer. So there was social media, there was SMS, there was email, and primarily it was the need to reach the customer where they would feel the most relevant in that sense. But then we also identified that the users started experiencing the product at on-demand kind of a thing, which means they would have certain needs and certain use cases which would be device specific, channel specific at various points in time. And if you do not really have an integrated context of how their interactions have been with you over one of those channels, then you are likely to frustrate that user at the end without really utilizing the true benefit of the multi-channel experience that you are already there on. So I think that is where we've consciously made a decision to actually lead by data, having the context shared across channels, and then all the interactions that are there have to have prior context as well as build on, say, some of the previous interactions that the users have had.
So can you give us like a very small example of what you mean by having a very seamless data experience across different channels, like a live example?
Sure. So maybe if you think about an experience on Ola itself. So if you've actually completed a ride and then you were not able to say, and similar experiences exist with Amazon as such, say you've faced a particular issue in say paying for that particular ride, and then you would probably reach us through a customer support channel. In that sense, we would actually know that you've not been able to say complete your ride. We'll also send an email to you, probably an SMS at that same time. All of that would have context, and then eventually, when you reach to settle that payment at the end, then the customer support team would also be able to look at the exact ride in which that problem occurred and what was the reason for that, and then would be able to help you out. Plus, the app would have the context of that user's journey, even in the end. So basically, if not being able to transact, then probably you'd have a push for a post-purchase instrument at a later point. So those kind of things would actually come in as an integrated communication and engagement strategy.
That makes sense. Thanks, Akhil. Bindia, what about you? How do you differentiate multi-channel versus omni-channel? And what's Myntra's strategy to enhance the user engagement in this universe?
So Rahim, for us in omni-channel, couple of things that we're doing to be able to enhance the experiences. We're saying that can we get some goodness in data sharing, which means that can we better integrate the loyalty programs? Because if you remember, I said in the beginning as well that if the user is the same, their behavior across offline and online would be potentially the same. And if it is different, it would mean that the brand should be able to service an online consumer probably differently than how they're servicing their offline consumer. So it is very, very important, hence the loyalty programs to have some kind of intersection. And if that is going to happen, that will mean some kind of data sharing, some kind of higher alignment, right, from what it is today. So that's one of the things that we are closely working as to how we kind of take it to next level. The other thing that we feel that we are constantly kind of building in omni-channel is around, so for instance, what we say that in online, it is unlimited space, right? Anybody can have as many products live, which actually means that you will never be able to discover a product, or the brands will never be able to showcase their stories the way they are able to do in an offline space.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, so that becomes very, very important, and that's one thing that we are trying to do we're creating multiple platforms for brand, from social commerce to Myntra Live. There are multiple channels, right? There is studio section, etc., right? Through which brands can actually showcase and speak directly to their consumers, and actually be able to speak about their stories, their launches, so on and so forth, so that the relationship is not transactional. While we can't make it 100% human like how it is in their offline store, but we can actually bring it much closer and much more relevant with regards to a brand, right? And it helps the brand, like I said, to move the relationship from a transactional to more engaging relationship. So these are the couple of things that we're actively working for omni-channel better integration. Some of the strategy that we're trying to imbibe.
Next, I was just curious, does Myntra like co-create these omni-channel experiences across the sister brands, or is it like completely verticalized to Myntra itself? So the Myntra customers are Myntra customers. You don't interact with a with another sort of vertical sister company that you have?
No, because the thing is, our customer base is very different.
Okay.
The one who would come to a Myntra versus somebody else is very, very different. In fact, Myntra is very different positioning than any other platform in the market for that matter.
Right.
So we've seen it within the same brand, the consumption of products and ASP is very different.
Right.
So from that perspective, we have to cater to the audience very differently. And on that point, fresh consumption, when I say fresh sale consumption, the new season merchandise consumption also in Myntra is much higher than any other platform.
Wow.
So you can't directly compare in that sense.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to point that out to people because there is this whole cycle of super apps, as they call it, where there are like 10 different apps within a single app, and people try and use the same sort of omni-channel strategy for a person who's in a banking app versus someone who's buying groceries. And sometimes you can't really correlate both of them. So you have to be very careful as to when you make an omni-channel strategy. You have to keep it separate. The consumers, like you rightly pointed out.
Just to give you a biggest, I won't quote the name, but one of the biggest brands internationally, sometimes we launch it across platforms.
Right.
It just doesn't work on the other platform purely because you don't have that kind of association or the consumers who connect with that kind of. So it's very important for the brands to be able to align to that platform.
Yeah, no, so it's good for people to know now that it's not a one size fits all strategy, and it's verticalized by different brands. Thanks, Vindhya. Okay, I'm going to move on to the channel strategy, and I'm actually going to shamelessly plug in one channel which I think people never really talk about, which I think can be really personalized, and that's voice. And the reason I'm plugging in that is because we are introducing voice as one of our channels at CleverTap. And I was wondering, I mean, there was supposed to be Madhur on this call, who's the VP at Lenskart. And I'll give you a simple experience that I had with Lenskart, where I ordered lenses and I ordered glasses. My glasses were ready, my lenses were not ready. And then when I called up customer support, I got callbacks from them, random numbers, which I wasn't sure if they're coming from Lenskart or from a third party, or it's a scam call. And I don't have to call on my phone. So it was all the more tedious for me to figure out whether I should pick up this call or not. So have you guys thought about voice as a separate channel to engage your users with a lot of personalized context? And again, let me make a small distinction, not from the customer support level perspective, where you obviously have the context, like that Raheem has ordered whatever from Myntra, but from even a delivery person's context, or it could be a random sales opportunity that you're trying to push to an end user. Have you guys thought about voice? So I'll keep it open for whoever wants to chime in on voice as a channel to engage with your users and create loyalty and affinity. Anyone?
I would say there have been explorations around that, but not really something that has been taken up for active development at this point. So, but I think there are certain use cases when you could think about a voice-based integration with something like an Alexa as well on that front. So basically, how would you deliver specific updates about a particular order at various points in time is something that we were exploring, especially in case of a cab booking experience. If you book the cab, say through app, how would you actually engage with the customer? Probably their Alexa assistant could actually give you inputs around, say, a driver arriving, schedule delay, or say if they've actually identified have had a blocker in there.
Right.
Similarly, I think there could be say certain experiences that could be shaped up around e-commerce as well. I'm assuming in terms of a voice-based assistant in there, along with booking itself, or probably adding add-ons to that itself.
Okay, cool. So it looks like you guys are actually exploring it and thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, for us also right now we're focused more on making our search better. So that's like, it's at the end of the day, it's like resource allocation and optimization. So for us, it's getting the search right first and then voice. Yeah, I would say.
Right, getting people to actually search through your thousands of products to find that one gem in the sea. All right. Okay,
and because in fashion, it's very tricky. Products, there are new trends coming every month.
Absolutely.
So to keep getting your search better.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks. Okay, so let's move on to getting a unified brand experience which I think is very critical for engaging our users, right? I mean, if I'm receiving an SMS or a WhatsApp, I would like to have a very seamless and happy experience. So if you can talk about leveraging this real-time analytics that you get from your platforms and acting upon it to deliver a unified brand experience, what is say Rapido doing or Ola doing in this regard to make sure that people actually receive notifications or through different channels, but on a real-time basis? So if I were to like say shop for something, and I don't want to receive an emailer like 2 months later or a month later or even a week later, right? Because people keep changing or searching for things at different moments of time. So how is Rapido, for example, utilizing the real-time analytics, and how are you guys increasing that to increase your brand affinity? So Neha, you can probably talk about this.
Sure, Ryan. So Rapido, as you would know, it's a utility brand, right? The purchase cycle is really small, and
Yeah.
unless we act upon fast, I know that the consumer would move to a competitor platform, right? And that's where real-time analytics, user analytics, definitely comes into play and is very critical for us, right? So understanding exactly what the user is going through at that moment of truth when they are exploring the platform, when they come to the platform and they are going through the entire booking experience, understanding what's going in there, and then based on the user insights, user information that I have, coming up with communication, be it with regards to what I can cross sell to them, be it with regards to what kind of discount, what kind of communication can I give it to them, right? So definitely real time analytics would be very critical in making sure that the consumer is having smooth experience, right? So
Right.
coming to that, the data points that we generally look at starts with how long the user has been in the brand life cycle. Is this a new user that I'm talking about? Is this a user who has been in the system for long, has given me a good LTV, and then probably is likely to churn, right? So a lot of user info, a lot of their transactional historical data comes into play. Exactly what kind of channel is the user coming from? Is it a brand ad on TV that the user has so seen versus probably a retargeting ad that I pitched to a repeat user, right? Making that entire communication consistent and seamless based on what channel the user is coming on, right? In terms of real-time app analytics, one thing that we have been focusing a lot is looking at the clickstream data of the user, understanding what all events do they interact with within the app, why probably they could be dropping off, right? And then also tying this back to data on the LTV and churn prediction of the user, so I understand what kind of burn should I give to, mapping generally what use cases have these user been up to in terms of the clusters of time of day of the week that they go, right? So maybe that gives me insight. Should I pitch an auto to a bike taxi user that I have, right? Or should I probably, can I pitch a local based on their ticket sizes, based on their general duration or distance traveled, right? So a lot of these insights come into play that kind of help us decide what to pitch, when a user is kind of dropping off or when the user is probably likely to churn, right? Definitely understanding everything in real time and then tying that data back to action, getting to product and supply teams on the same boat is very critical.
Wow. Yeah. So you're using a lot of real-time data to be able to sort of get the customer, right, and not let him or her move on to another competitive platform. Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure the product you're using is very powerful. Would be my guess. Again, plugging in very shamelessly. But okay. Well, thanks for your input. What about you, Akhil? Very similar, kind of similar field. How are you guys trying to gain an edge with your known competitors?
Sure, I think some of these could be business secrets. So I don't know a lot of that, but yeah, and considering Rapido is there, so yeah, I think primarily the way we are also thinking about it is say the right opportunity to pitch relevant products and relevant discounts to the user at the right point. We have our own proprietary systems in that case. The way we reach customers, there's something called Connect internally that we actually reach out to, that we leverage to reach out to customers. For that, we have a lot of say inputs coming in terms of the in-trip, let's say the way. So there's a complete journey in terms of a user interacting with the product, such as a mobility platform in there. So they'll probably request a ride. They'll probably experience stockouts at various points in time. Then you'll probably have understanding of the demand that comes in, and you can actually plug in that real-time data to identify the right set of products, right set of say ride that you would want to project or say pitch to that person if there has been a stock out. So that is one area. Another area is, say, if you've recently identified, if we see that there's been a bad customer experience across that journey. So how could we leverage our real-time analytics around that and probably send out a coupon or a discount around that, so that at least then they are willing to consider Ola for their next ride eventually. So those kind of things we are exploring at this point. A lot of that I cannot really divulge in terms of details there.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, how soon is real time for Ola?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you guys have your own formula.
Yes. So it's primarily, I think, we're trying for that. I think throughput of the system is important. I think that's where you'd probably pitch in CleverTap in there. Throughput is something that we need to optimize for. And of course, at Ola scale, it becomes a much bigger problem to solve.
Okay, cool. And disclaimer, we're not sponsoring the event. So
Sure.
In case you get their ideas. Okay, I have like a final question, and it's more on personalization. And like, a lot of things in tech, which are overused nowadays, again, buzzwords, which everyone uses, unfortunately, and then it sort of dilutes the actual word itself, like AI, ML. Nowadays, we're hearing about personalization, hyper-personalization, to improve brand affinity, and, people throw in all these things. I wanted to understand from each of you, because everyone is using this buzzword, but we would like to understand, our audience likes to understand, how do you distinguish one from the other? Personalization versus hyper-personalization in order to improve brand affinity and stickiness. So if you can, give us your opinion on this, and how you are working to make sure your users experience that in the actual field. So,
I'll take that. Rahim, for us, personalization is the backbone of how we operate, because like I said, we have so many products to be able to ensure that our browse and finally discovery experience is seamless as possible. Personalization is extremely critical. Now, there is one nuance here, right? Whatever said and done, even if you're an e-commerce platform, there is a personalized data, so to say, right? That usually you get broadly only 25 to 30% of overall user base that you have. It's not like you're going to get 100% of that.
Sure.
Now, for the 20-25% data, you can actually do hyper personalization, but for the rest of it, you can personalize. Now, through the transactional data that you have, like a person came, you may not know exact data around age, gender, etc. These would be derived data basis the kind of behavior that you have seen on the platform, etc. Right? So that's what I mean by transactional versus personalized data. Right? So hence there is this whole thing about while you want to do personalization, but then the amount of data that you have is limited. At the same time, when you're doing personalization, you cannot suddenly personalize it to the T. Because you'll have to kind of see what is the kind of behavior consumer is displaying basis your personalization. Now, I will break this into two parts, right? Personalization and hyper-personalization. When I say personalization, that means a consumer came. I know that, and because India is such a culturally varied market, it doesn't make sense for me to show somebody who's probably a woman logging in from South India who's always purchased saree to show her a denim, for instance. So I may actually personalize some of the articles that I'm showing, some of the price points, for instance, I'm showing, right? And this you can actually boost in the product display page, or in the list page, right? So if somebody, for instance, logs into the app, she can see a lot of sarees, she can see relevant price points for that matter. The kind of banners that we show could be slightly personalized. So this is the leg one of personalization, where it is a little bit of personalization, but it's not literally in your face. If somebody else, for instance, is logging in from North India, will not probably see a very different app, right? So that's the first leg of personalization. Today, as we speak, there is huge amount of effort which is going in to get this phase one right. And we are actually moving very strongly in that direction. There's a lot of resource allocation that has gone into personalization because, like I said, for us, discovery and the whole browse experience is your whole in-app experience is very, very important.
Sure.
Then there comes the second leg, which is your hyper-personalization. That means I know that this consumer is probably a 20-year-old, is looking for edgy kind of clothes, is going for a party, etc., right? I know the details to that level. And when that consumer comes in, rather than showing sarees, everything that I have in the app, I show very, very relevant content to the extent that probably the homepage that they will see when they log into the app could be very different from somebody else, right? To the extent, if somebody is probably logging in from a tier 3, tier 2, we could actually get into a vernacular, a phase where we actually show very different kind of content, different kind of language. Like, again, the whole in-app experience is very, very different. Wow. So that's the leg of hyper-personalization. If somebody's, for instance, I know the details to the T, I can actually say, I can recommend saying that, okay, this is your body type. These are the kind of products that you should buy, right? Things like that. I can actually become an enabler in that sense. We are still focusing a lot on phase 1. Okay. Phase 2 is the journey that we've just scratched the surface there, I would say. But that is something that is our key endeavor, right? To move in that direction, because like I said, innovation, we have to constantly keep innovating and we have to move in that direction, and we will have to, in some time, but it's going to be a journey, and personalization is a journey, which is a hard path, but you have to succeed at that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know that you guys are not jumping on the hyper personalization bandwagon. First, let's figure out the personalization bandwagon and then maybe go to the next phase. So, and I'm sure it's very relevant for Myntra, right? I mean, the number of mouths that you have on your brand, you need to be able to do that in the first phase. So thanks. What about you, Neha? What's your experience been with Rapido? And then we'll take Akhil as the last person. So.
Yeah, right. So again, it ties back very closely with the consumer analytics piece that we're talking about, right? Understanding where the user is stuck, understanding their needs, their challenges, and then offering, kind of personalizing and customizing what we talk to them about, right? When it comes to personalization at Rapido, we have definitely kind of created custom communication and custom discounting strategy based on the churn and LTV likelihood of the user that we are able to predict. Also factoring in why the user could be dropping off from the platform, what channels are they coming from, right? These are some of the aspects that we have been able to move beyond demographical inputs and trying to address the needs and concerns of the user through various communication, right? But given that we have very micro details of data in terms of the transaction history of the users, we are also experimenting with few things on hyper personalization piece, right? So let's say I know a particular user is moving from this cluster to a particular other cluster at a given time, and based on their transaction history, I can predict that probably I could send the PN to this particular user to that he would be likely to come back in the evening to the original area, right, with the journey generated from. So kind of being there in the moment when I know, kind of I'm predicting the need of the user rather than just analyzing the real-time input, and then personalizing the entire discounting offering, in the entire, what service do I pitch to the user, what kind of communication do I give to them based on that need. So that's something that is definitely in the initial stages, but we do see a huge scope of slicing and dicing whatever data points we have currently to build a very hyper personalization strategy there. But yeah, again, it comes back to that we would also need to be careful that this doesn't look like very intrusive to the user, right? So there's a fine line between that as well. So that's something that we are currently trying to develop apart from some of the past personalization strategies we have tried.
Yeah, that's a good point you made, actually. So I remember once going on Google Maps and searching for some place, and then I was there, and suddenly Google sends me a notification saying, "Do you want to see the menu of that place?" And I was a bit freaked out because that's not something which I would want. I like personalization, but not to the point of them knowing where I am, what I'm eating, and who am I with. So so there's a very fine line which I think people have to adhere to be not very intrusive, like you mentioned. So Akhil, the ball's in your court, man. What do you have?
So I think we don't really have specific, we cannot really talk about, say, hyper personalization being truly in place across a lot of the systems that we see right now. I think the way we think about personalization, I think it started with understanding the user's demographic and segmented behavior around specific areas. But say when you talk about being able to really leverage real-time behavior on the platform and then be able to curate that experience, I think there is some way to go, especially I've not really seen that happening across a lot of Indian companies. I think there are certain startups, Israel-based startups, and a lot of, say, US-based startups which have started experimenting with concepts of beacons and those kind of things, something that you refer to, for example, in terms of, say, Google being able to show that menu at the relevant time. So I think we also leverage a lot of data. I wouldn't really call it a real-time, say, hyper leveraged, hyper personalized, say, approach towards, say, serving a customer. But I think at this stage, we are really looking at trip parameters, understanding where what are the trip patterns for a particular user, basically based on that, being able to suggest, say, probably sending in a right pin push notification at that point to the user to probably consider Ola before opening up Uber or, say, Rapido at that point. So those kind of things we are doing, not exactly in the hyper personalization space per se as such.
Yeah, and I was just thinking for both you and Rapido, the kind of things that Myntra probably is trying to do on the homepage, you really can't do, right? Because the homepage is going to remain the same. What you can offer as a service may change a bit here and there, depending on the demographics or other parameters of the user, but otherwise it's pretty much.
There is a lot of scope around that, and especially when you see that Ola is actually entering into a lot of different businesses now. Ola Dash and EVs being there. There is a lot of data at play, a lot of real-time data that we could leverage. I think there is some way to go before the systems could take be performant enough to be able to leverage that in time.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Akhil. So final piece of question. I'll start off with you, Akhil. One advice for marketing leaders, besides using CleverTap, obviously, for their omni-channel experience, how do you integrate marketing channels and how do you create a seamless customer experience?
See, I have a very, very product-based bias towards this because I come from that background. I would really think about marketing not being in your face every single time in all of your experience, but being there when you need it. And that is what I would call a truly omni-channel contextual experience. And that's how I would suggest, say, to think about it. I would say leverage data, but with the limits of, say, not freaking someone out within, say, things that you talk about, intrusiveness and all of that. There are certain restrictions around GDPR as well. I would say there has to be a balance between contextualness versus being too intrusive at that point.
Good. Thanks, Akhil. Neha, you want to go next?
Yeah, right, Rahim. I would say one key thing that could make or break omni-channel strategy would be that whatever platforms, whatever channels we are talking about, which are the touch points, have a very robust data flow among themselves, right? And that we are able to leverage very smartly these data points to kind of bring to user a seamless experience where these channels are not actually competing with each other, but they're actually enabling each other to further make sure that the user is moving down the funnel. So that would be one thing that could make it a success or take it.
Great. Thank you, Neha. Bindya, last.
I mean, most of the things are already covered. Like I said, what is important is the mindset change. Yeah. They are not different channels. They are one channel with servicing the same consumer. It's not about offline, online anymore. There's a mutual dependence. And as we grow into the future, it's not going to be a brand growth or a platform growth. It's going to be a brand plus platform, which means omni-channel growth. And hence, that's how we should view it. And once that thought process, which we've already seen changing, comes through there can be a huge amount of goodness that can flow in through enablement of each other. And that's the direction that we're looking at. So that's how every market, even from marketing standpoint, the intention is that you don't see that, okay, from offline I have to target differently, online I have to target differently. It's the same consumer at the same time. You could have different strategy for offline, online consumer, but your consumer is same, and hence that's the lens that should be applied every time, keeping both of them as platforms.
Okay. Thank you, Una. That's great advice, all three of you. I mean, each of you have achieved great strides in your respective verticals. I mean, we can see it in the monthly active user numbers that your brand commands, like I said earlier. So the advice that you've given is very useful, at least to me it was. So thanks for your time. Are there any questions from the audience that we can take? And frankly, I don't know where to see the audience questions.
Actually, the audience questions appear in the Q&A box, but so far we have not received any questions. But we are grateful to all of you for taking the time and joining us today.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks, Anisha and Neha and Vindhya and Akhil.